Hello, Shiver Seekers. Are you ready to follow us into the unknown? I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Bart.
And you have found the Dark Oak. Today I'm going to tell you the story of Joshua Maddux, an 18-year-old who disappeared and was found 7 years later under very mysterious circumstances. Welcome to the Dark Oak, the mystery podcast with purpose. Each month, through our charity, the Branch of Hope Foundation, we give a portion of earnings from our sponsors and Patreon to a nonprofit organization related to the first episode of the month. To find out more information, head to our website, thedarkoak.com, our Instagram page, The Dark Oak Podcast, or stay until the end of the episode and we'll give you all the details. Now, listeners, you may have noticed something is a little different today. My husband, Barton, is once again joining us on the podcast. Cynthia and I are so pleased to have him, not only as an avid supporter of the podcast, but also occasional co-host. Welcome, Bart.
Thank you, wife Stephanie.
I mean, could there be any other Stephanie? Wife Stephanie. I like that. Well, as we announced a few days ago on our social media, Cynthia's mother, Renee, is now at peace after her 19-month battle with ovarian cancer. And Cynthia and her sister have been absolute nightingales. They have been caring for her 24/7 for weeks now. And her passing it's all the things. It's relief that she's not suffering, but also just intense grief, as you can imagine. Miss Renee was an incredible supporter of our podcast and just a wonderful person and supporter for Cynthia. So Bart and I are going to pinch hit a little bit for Cynthia. Bart's going to be here for the next 3 episodes. And again, we're so happy to have him. And just so happens that the cases we were going to cover are kind of in Bart's wheelhouse a little bit. So it'll be really interesting to get a different feel for cases. True crime is not necessarily Bart's interest. However, he is so kind to be here today. Every now and then I listen to the podcast Murder with My Husband, which is hosted by a woman named Peyton, and her husband, Garrett, is her co-host. And it's really cute because on the sign off, Peyton will always say, "I love it." Garrett says, "And I hate it," talking about true crime stuff. So I kind of picture that being us sometimes too.
I'm not going to go that far. It's definitely not my wheelhouse. But, when you asked me to do the first one, it was just an aviation one. So I said, okay, I can do that. And so I don't know what we're talking about on the next 3, but I believe you that these are things that I might be able to discuss. That being said, I'm a poor substitute for Cynthia, but, we love her and I'm trying to pinch it as best I can.
Yeah, it was Frederick Valentich's case. I think you and I both concluded if there was ever a UFO abduction, that one was probably it. That seemed like all the pieces fit together where it couldn't be a hoax. And it was so interesting hearing your 2 cents on it. Anybody who hasn't listened to that case, please go back and do so. It is a fascinating case. But Barton was a military pilot, both helicopter and fixed wing. So getting to hear his perspective on what a pilot might be seeing or experiencing or relaying back to the tower, it was really interesting to hear him be able to knock down very quickly some of the explanations or theories as to what may have been happening that excluded UFO abduction, which after you explain them, yeah, it just sounds like nonsense. So anyway, that was really fun. And now you're back.
That was fun.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be back.
And it's really nice that you are going to be part of our 100th episode celebration.
True, but I don't really feel like I deserve to be part of the 100th episode. I feel like that's Cynthia's place.
Well, it is. You are going to help us, and then Cynthia will be back to celebrate 100. So you're just part of the celebration. You're like in the sidelines of the celebration, if you will.
Okay, perfect. That's a good place for me.
No, but I do agree. 100th episodes would not at all be a celebration without Cynthia here. So we're definitely going to have her back to help us record that.
Sounds good.
And on the subject of our 100th episode celebration, for every week in April and May, we will be releasing 2 episodes every week. That ultimately results in 9 bonus episodes. Those are coming out every Friday. So we will release our regular weekly episodes on Wednesday and then a bonus episode every Friday. So again, 9 bonus episodes. In addition, we want to celebrate with you by doing a giveaway. You can go on our Instagram page right now and check out the giveaway prizes. One is this adorable wristlet. Well, it's labeled as a wristlet, but honestly, it could be anything. It could be a cosmetic bag. It could be an on-the-go bag, pencil bag, anything that you may want to shove in there. And it's so cute. It has our logo, and then it says, "Shh, I'm listening to my favorite mystery podcast." Aren't they cool, Bart? Like, and my kids have been so cute. They're like, Mom, you have merch. You have merch for your podcast.
It's true. They look great. They're a really great little bag that, look, I'm a guy. I can't talk about bags. But, but yeah,
to be fair,
I think for people that like bags, they're great.
Yeah, to be fair, I came out and said, Bart, I just got wristlets for the podcast. He said, what the heck is a wristlet?
Like, is that a bracelet?
Is that a bracelet? What is that? And so I had to explain that it basically is just a bag with a handle that can fit around your wrist. But yeah, so that was his reaction. However, the bags are really cute. We also have these candles, which are so cheeky and fun. They say on the label, smells like chloroform. Just kidding. It's lavender and vanilla. And I have been having so much fun with these candles. So you're not going to want to miss those. I think we're going to have as many as 5 winners. Again, it's not so much about the winning. It's just we want you to be part of the celebration with us. And we feel like winners, having been supported by you Shiver Seeking listeners for 100 episodes. And we want to give back a little bit. So all you got to do, hop on our Instagram page, follow us, give us a comment on any Instagram post, and then give us a 5-star review on either Apple Podcast or Spotify, and then send us a message. We've gotten a number of entries so far, some who had actually already done all the things that we required of you because they're not that difficult, but just some ways to get you plugged in with us and us plugged in with you. And it's been so nice to get your little messages and to feel the love. So check that out. All right, without further ado, let's talk about Josh Maddux. Now, Barton has not been privy to any information about this case. And because he doesn't eat, sleep, and breathe mysteries and true crime like I do, I doubt you've ever even heard the name Joshua Maddux. Is that correct?
No, I immediately thought of Greg Maddux, the pitcher of baseball, but so no.
Different.
Right.
But I appreciate that you at least had some basis there. That's good. I'll start out by telling you on April 8th, 2008, Josh was an 18-year-old boy living in rural Colorado. On this beautiful Thursday, Josh told his family he was going for a walk, something that the nature-loving teen did often. But today would be different because Josh would never return home. Josh Maddux was born on March 9th, 1990, to his parents Mike and Roberta Maddux in the very small town of Woodland Park, Colorado, which at the time had a population of about 8,000 people. Now, the area is west of Colorado Springs and is known for being a bit off the beaten path and also serenely beautiful. Are you familiar with Woodland Park? I hadn't heard of it before. I mean, I know we have friends that live in Colorado Springs, but I wasn't familiar with Woodland Park.
I don't know that I'm familiar with that, but certainly spent time in Colorado. And 20 miles west of Colorado Springs is essentially in the mountains because Colorado Springs is right literally on the foot of the Rocky Mountains. So yeah, I would think it's just over the ridge there.
Yeah, exactly. The small town is surrounded by the Pike National Forest. I don't know if that's one you've hiked in before.
I don't think I've hiked in that one before, but I know exactly where it is.
Yeah. Well, this area offers a ton of nature-based activities for lovers of the outdoor. And Josh was absolutely one of them. He was the youngest son and fourth child in his family, and he was homeschooled for the first couple years. However, he would begin public school when his parents divorced, and Josh lived full time with his father, Mike, and his sisters, Kate and Ruth, in a home situated close to the town of Woodland Park. But as you said, this is nestled within those beautiful forested mountains. As with most residents of Woodland Park, Josh enjoyed spending as much time as he could outdoors, hiking, and observing the native wildlife. Let's just sum it up by saying he was truly living the Colorado lifestyle.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Sounds great.
It was clear from an early age that Josh was a standout. He was very academically gifted and would consistently excel his way through school, earning top grades every year. His sister Kate would say, quote, "His IQ was off the charts. He spent most of his time writing fictional stories and playing music. He had an interesting and unique sense of style. People in his high school class knew him for being that, quote, awesome kid that wore a top hat and brought a briefcase to school instead of a backpack. There was this subtle sophistication about him that made him interesting and a standout," end quote. Now, Barton, just because you're my husband and we're sitting here recording this podcast, I would like to relate to you on the fact that we are parents to a unique kid. And I think we can both attest to the fact that kids that walk to the beat of their own drum are so unique to watch, and they really enrich your life. I mean, they just view things in a way that you never would have seen it.
Oh, absolutely. And more so for me, frankly, even than you. I was a straight arrow from the beginning, from the youngest age. I dressed perfectly preppy and normal all the time. I was a military guy. I mean, everything. And so to see our son, who is so unique, and oh, by the way, has worn a top hat on his own.
Yes.
Nobody asked him to, but and so I get it, but to see it is amazing.
All that to say, loving a little person who's like this, it does. I mean, it enriches your life so much.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, in addition to being book smart, Josh also had a great sense of humor and was talented in writing and drawing. For instance, one of his creations was a comic strip called Stickman and Smiley, and he would write out and draw these comic strips and then show them to all of his friends. And I suppose this goes without saying, but Josh was very well liked by his classmates, and he had lots of friends for all the reasons we just mentioned. He's smart, entertaining, and just friendly and full of joy, full of a lot of happiness.
Like our guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, unfortunately, everything about Josh's life was not easy. See, Josh had an older brother named Zachary. Josh and Zachary were very close, but unfortunately, Zachary suffered from a severe depression, and he suffered for years. And sadly, in June of 2006, at the age of 18, Zachary would lose his battle with depression. Zachary was only a week away from graduating high school when he took his own life. The family was shocked, especially Josh, who was only 16 years at the time. And like most younger brothers, Josh really looked up to his older brother, Zachary. Josh's family reported that this was understandably an incredibly difficult time for Josh. And I imagine for his entire family.
I can only imagine.
Horrific. Absolutely horrific. Now, despite it all, 2 years later, in May of 2008, Josh appeared to be doing well. His friends and family would report that he seemed happy, and there didn't appear to be any indication that he was depressed or concerned about anything. Josh was now a 6-foot tall, 150-pound, 18-year-old teen with long blonde hair. In his spare time, he wrote his own music and then played the songs on his guitar. What a talented guy, right? It seems like every stage in his development, you hear something else that's amazing that not anybody can do.
That's right. Absolutely. Sounds like a really interesting and great kid.
Yeah. Josh continued to enjoy regular walks through the scenic woods that surrounded his home. So on May 8th, when he told his sister Kate that he was going for a walk, she didn't think anything of it. But when Josh wasn't home later that day, his family began to worry. They didn't panic right away or jump to any conclusions. I mean, he is 18 after all. But they decided to be cautious and call a few of Josh's friends to see if they knew where he might be. But to their disappointment, no one had seen Josh that day or heard from Josh. Without a lot of other immediate options, they waited, hoping that Josh would come walking through the front door at any moment. But Josh didn't come home that night. By the next day, Josh's sister, Kate, wondered if she was mistaken about what Josh had told her. Maybe he said he was going to go camping in the woods instead of a walk. He was known to spend a night or two in the woods on occasion, so his family again waited. But again, Josh didn't come home the next day or the next. Finally, on May 13th, 5 days after Josh vanished, the police were called. Josh's father, Mike, was the one to make that impossible call. He said, quote, "I got up one morning and Josh was there. Then he just never came home. The next day, he still didn't come home. I called his friends. Nobody had seen him, and nobody knows where he is," end quote. The official search for Josh began in earnest, with authorities, family, and friends looking all over the neighborhood and near the Parkland area. But days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, with no sign of Josh. It was beginning to seem like finding Josh was like looking for a needle in a haystack. And I think that's accurate. If you have a huge wooded area, he could be anywhere.
Oh, for sure. And if you waited that long, the longer you wait, the larger the search area can become.
Yeah. And, when I first read 5 days, there was a slight bit of, I'm not going to use the word judgment, but may have been, there may have been a little in there. Like, why did you wait 5 days? But again, this is a kid that loved being outside. And I use the word kid, but he's 18 years old. He's an 18-year-old, free-spirited, independent guy. So maybe he did just take off for a little bit to clear his head. And he had spent the night in the woods before. So when I kind of put all that in perspective, I was able to give a little bit of a leniency there. But no matter what the reason for waiting 5 days, it absolutely had to hinder the investigation, like the search for him.
Yeah, you have to think waiting that long it just opens up the possibilities, the geographic possibilities, all that sort of stuff. I don't know the circumstances in terms of their home life and what he was, what he normally did or didn't do. I'm just going to give the benefit of the doubt to the family there.
Yeah, that's eventually what I had to do too, because after reading more about the Maddux family, I don't think they were neglectful or derelict in anything they were doing. They really tried to do the right thing by kind of giving Josh his independence, but then also being aware this is unusual. Like, he should not be gone this long. Missing person posters were plastered around the town with a description and photo of Josh, along with a notice that he may be in mental distress due to still grieving the loss of his brother. Anyone that sighted Josh was instructed to approach him with caution and compassion. I think this was truly an abundance of caution to even put this on there. I think they thought there was no other reason. Like, there was nothing else that could have been concerning Josh at that point. So they thought if he had wandered off in some kind of depressive state, it had to be as a result of Zachary's death, because now Josh was 18. Maybe he was thinking of his brother at that state. I think they were grasping at straws as to why Josh would have disappeared. Without answers, his family began to create scenarios that could explain Josh's disappearance. In a later interview, his sister Kate said she hoped that he simply left town to go play music or to start a different lifestyle, saying, quote, "Josh was a free spirit, and he always told us that he was going to have a great adventure, and he may not talk to us for a while." When he said a while, I started to think maybe he meant years. Since Josh was 18, it was reasonable to assume he may have decided to leave town to start a new life. As one of his 2 older sisters, I have always chosen to believe that this was the case. I have expected Josh to return home to my father's house at any time with a wife and small children so that they can meet their grandparents and 2 aunts. Josh has always been known for his musical and literary talent, so maybe we would find him playing music with a band on tour or catch him authoring successful novels under a pen name so that he could keep his preferred lifestyle of solitude in the woods, end quote. Picking that apart, there's so much hope in everything she's saying, and I applaud her, because your mind, I think, in a situation like this could go to the dark place so quickly. The fact that she was remembering her brother and all the things that he was looking forward to in his life and hoping that he was accomplishing those things. I don't know. I think it's very sweet how much she cared for her brother.
Yeah, of course. I think that in a situation where someone is just missing, it's just incredibly difficult for those who care about the one that is missing. it sounds like she was just doing the best she could to formulate a situation where he could be missing and it would be playing out in a way that could be explained by his personality in the best way. And that's great. It is. I mean, it's the best you could probably do with a situation where someone who you wish was with you is not.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well said. When the idea of Josh disappearing, again, because of a depressive state, came up, Kate, who was the last person to see Josh, at least that we know of, described him as being in a good mood. She didn't see anything that would necessarily indicate he was suicidal. Now, as we know, covering many of these cases, you don't always know. People that have intent to end their lives, it's not always evident. It's not always broadcast. But it just seemed out of character for Josh. So they chose to think that he had chose to start over somewhere. Investigators did explore the idea of foul play, but there was nothing to indicate Josh's disappearance was anything out of that of his own free will. He was also 18 years old at the time of his disappearance, making him a legal adult. So running away was fine from a legal standpoint. Officers didn't really have a lot. They couldn't force him to come home.
Right.
So without other avenues to explore, the official search for Josh Maddux came to an end. However, in an abundance of caution, police placed Josh in a missing persons database so that his family could hopefully one day receive answers as to what became of their son. For 7 years, Mike Maddux never gave up searching for Josh. He continually searched homeless shelters in Colorado Springs. He scoured campgrounds in the Pike National Forest and scanned strangers' faces on the street. But there was never any news. He even refused to move from his home in case Josh one day returned. And I can totally see that.
Yeah.
Like, if he ever comes back, I want him to know how to find me.
Yeah.
I've heard about family members of missing children, not even wanting to ever change their phone number or their address, anything.
Of course.
Just for the hope that they could someday come home or call. In an interview with the Denver Post, Mike said, quote, "For years, there's tears and prayers and hope and hoping. There's hope and wonder and waiting. All of a sudden, you're on a roller coaster," end quote. And I can only imagine. Then, in August of 2015, a shocking discovery was made by a local construction crew who were in the process of demolishing an old abandoned cabin. This cabin, which was a quarter-mile away from Josh's home, had once been used as a residential property, but it had ceased to house anyone 10 years earlier. The owner of the cabin, Chuck Murphy, decided to demolish the old wood cabin to make way for property development. He had purchased the property, including the cabin, in the 50s, and the Murphy family would maintain ownership of the property for the next 60 years. One of the Murphy brothers had lived in the cabin for about 30 years before abandoning it in 2005. So the timeline is the cabin was vacant in 2005. Joshua disappeared in 2008, and the cabin is being demolished in 2015. The cabin now, as it sat, was deserted and dilapidated. Animals had kind of moved into it. It was falling apart. I mean, it was built in the 50s, so you can only imagine this cabin had seen better days, if you will.
Sure.
But as construction crews began to demo the area near the fireplace, they would make a gruesome discovery. A body was lodged in the stone chimney. The body was only wearing a shirt and was found upside down with the knees above the head in a fetal position, and the legs were dislodged from the torso. The body was also partially mummified. Due to the condition of the body, dental records had to be used to make an identification. However, the body would be positively identified as that of 18-year-old Joshua Maddux. After 7 years, he was found in the chimney of an abandoned cabin just a quarter-mile away from his home.
That's horrible.
It's almost unfathomable to me, like unfathomable. While the Maddux family was grateful to be able to lay Josh to rest, the circumstances in which he was found raised many questions. Like, how on earth did Josh wind up in that chimney? The autopsy would lead to even more questions. Josh had no broken bones, no knife marks, no bullet holes, no drugs in his system, and no signs of any trauma. And there was the odd positioning of the body. Remember, Josh's body was found feet down in the fetal position, which would mean to get into this chimney, he would had to go in like head first.
I mean, if you're going to go into a chimney, I'm not sure you're going to choose to go in head first.
No, it's true. There was also the clothing. Josh was wearing only a ribbed thermal type shirt, nothing else. To paint the picture, he went into the chimney wearing no shoes, socks, or underwear, nothing except for the thermal shirt. Strangely, though, the rest of his clothing was found inside the cabin next to the fireplace. For these reasons, the county coroner, Al Bourne, ruled Josh's death an accident of unknown cause. Because of the positioning of the body, the coroner believed Josh was alive when he entered the chimney. This guided to the leading theory that Josh climbed into the chimney on his own accord and then became stuck. Because he couldn't get out, it is suggested that he succumbed to dehydration, or a more likely scenario is that he died from hypothermia, as at the time of his disappearance, temperatures dipped as low as 20 degrees Fahrenheit at night. That's -6°C for our metric listeners. Now, since he was tall and thin, remember he was 6 foot and 150 pounds, the coroner theorized Josh tried to shimmy down the chimney to get access to the cabin, but then became stuck. In his report, Coroner Bourne wrote Josh's entrapment, quote, appeared to have been a voluntary act in order to gain access, end quote.
But his clothes are in the cabin?
Yep, they were. And he was only wearing a shirt in the chimney. So if he was trying to gain access...
I guess the question becomes, was it a situation where he managed to take them off in the process of trying to shimmy and they were just laying at the bottom? Or were they like carefully placed outside of, you know what I'm saying? Like laying at the bottom. I understand that.
I hear what you're saying, and I can see even in that situation kicking off your shoes, but your underwear?
I think you would do just about anything if you were stuck. Like if there was some way you could find a way to shimmy out, or if something was holding you up, you would tear it or do whatever you needed to do, I would imagine, in that situation, a life or death, like you're literally stuck.
Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find the specific description of the clothing. Now, I read from one side to the other. One article I read said the clothes were neatly folded next to the fireplace. Now, yeah, to me, that's different, right?
That's different.
I've also seen laying next to the fireplace. What I would like to know is what were the condition of the clothes? Were they sooty? Were they torn? Because to me, that would indicate what you're saying, that they were in the chimney with him. But I've never seen anything to say that outside of his clothes were laying next to the fireplace. Not in the fireplace, next to the fireplace. I've never seen anything saying in the fireplace. So think about, like, how would it, if you're in there taking off your clothes, wouldn't they fall straight down?
Well, sure. That's what I'm getting at. Sure, if they're folded by the fireplace, that's a completely different
They're folded,
situation.
exactly. I don't know. I only read that in one article, so I'm going to dial that back a little bit and say that might not be the situation. And heck, even if he had taken them off before he went up, I doubt, I mean, maybe an 18-year-old boy is super fastidious, but I doubt he would have folded them himself. You know, I don't know. Everything I've read consistently has said the clothes were next to the fireplace, not in the fireplace. So to me, that indicates something other than them just falling off of his body and falling down.
Yeah, if that's the case, yes, I agree.
Chuck Murphy, the owner of this abandoned cabin, read this coroner's report and he immediately disagreed. He said that this theory was categorically impossible because the chimney would not have been accessible from the outside. He claimed the chimney was covered by a heavy grate, making access completely unworkable. He said, quote, "It was a heavy wire grate, a wire mesh. I installed it across the chimney about one row of bricks from the top. We didn't want trouble with raccoons and things getting into the chimney." There was no way that guy crawled inside the chimney with that steel webbing. He didn't come down the chimney, end quote.
What was the status of that wire at the time they found him?
Here's where it gets a little hairy. At the time Josh's body was found, the chimney had all but been demolished. So there was no way to go back and confirm that it was still there. I don't know. I've seen over and over Chuck Murphy saying that wasn't possible. However, some have said maybe over time it had disintegrated. After all, it had been sitting there mostly vacant for 10 years. Chuck Murphy did say that he occasionally would go back to check on it, mostly to just make sure that like vandals weren't living in it. And he said he never, there was the occasional break-in, but nothing of any significance. So could that heavy steel rebar wire mesh have rusted through? Or could Josh have somehow pulled it out? Yeah, maybe. No one really knows, is what I'm saying. Chuck Murphy is saying it was absolutely there, zero chance of him getting in. Everybody else is saying, well, we're just not sure.
Yeah. There's no way to know, right? I have no reason not to believe Chuck Murphy, right? Why would he make anything
I
up?
believe it was there. So again, let's look at the timeline. The cabin was abandoned in 2005. We believe, based on the state of the body, that Josh was in that chimney right when he disappeared. So that would have been in 2008. So between 2005 and 2008, could that chimney grate have disintegrated to the point where Josh could have moved it or slipped through it? I don't know.
It's hard to know, particularly without knowing any specifics about the grate. Really, Chuck Murray said he put it in, and I believe him. Could a human being perhaps dislodge it or take the clasps or screws out or something like that? Sure, a person can do that. A raccoon can't.
But it makes you wonder, like, take the screws out. Like, again, what reason does this kid have to get in this abandoned cabin that, by the way, other vandals have gone in before? If you really wanted access to this cabin, wouldn't you just go in, like, wouldn't you break a window or something? It just seems very odd that that's the route you would choose, is to literally unscrew a grate to try to go down a chimney.
Well, look, I said earlier, I'm a straight-laced guy when in the military. It's not going to occur to me to jump into a chimney.
And again, this guy was smart.
But he was different and he was adventurous. If he was like, wow, this would be neat. What if I got in this place by going down the chimney? You said he's a tall, skinny guy. Maybe he was like, oh, look, I can fit down this. And, I used the term on the Fred Valentich episode, and we've talked about many times, is Occam's razor, right? The simplest explanation is usually the best one. And in this case, what are we talking about as alternatives? In my mind, he went down the chimney. He tried to get into the place by being kind of like different and adventurous, and it turned very, very tragically for him in a way that he obviously did not anticipate. What are the other options? Somebody killed him and stuffed him down this thing when there's no evidence of any damage to his body. Some kid that everybody likes, has no enemies, in Woodland Park, Colorado. Did he try to climb up the chimney and got stuck? I suppose. And
if the articles I read, the eyewitness reports of the clothes being next to the fireplace, to me, it would make, and I'm not even going to use the phrase make sense, because none of this makes sense.
No.
But it seems more likely that he was trying to go up the chimney.
Well, possibly. But I don't know, you could get stuck going up the chimney as easily as coming down.
No, that's probably true.
And also, if he was adventurous, like if he was like, well, maybe if I took all this off and I got on top of the chimney and climbed down it or something, you make it a funny face, but he's an 18-year-old boy. 18-year-old boys get into all kinds of nonsense.
Well, I've never been an 18-year-old boy, so
I have.
I wouldn't know, but maybe you're right.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, and particularly one who has a very unique, adventurous mind and spirit, who knows?
Okay.
He's just like, you know what? He's sitting there hanging out in some empty cabin by himself just to spend time on his own. He's like, you know what? Maybe I need to go down that chimney.
And we're not making light of.
No, I'm not making light of.
No, but
that's the way that.
Yeah.
That's the way that 18-year-old, 15-year-old boys think. They think like, wow, maybe I should do that. And in this case, obviously, and there have been many other tragedies with that age boys making decisions where they thought they were doing something fun or adventurous and it went the wrong way. I'm 0% making light of it. I'm saying that's the way it could happen, like just dreaming up something.
This also makes me terrified. Cynthia and I are very open about the fact that we're boy moms. Right. I mean, I've still got a few years to prepare, but you're going to have to handle my anxiety during that stage of their life for sure.
Yes. We'll see. Well, that's how boys are. They're adventurous and that kind of. And it sounds like this particular boy was very. And I don't mean to call him a boy. He's 18, but I mean, I'm. To me, he's a boy.
That's okay. Cynthia and we've covered several cases of young men that are between like 17 and 20, and we call them man boys because, okay, we know you're men. We will refer to you as a man, but you're a boy. Like, there is a lot you don't know about the world yet.
He's a man legally. That's it.
A man legally. Yeah.
But to me, he's a boy, and he's doing things that boys do. So, most of which is positive. Out hiking and adventuring and doing all kinds of cool stuff, and that's great. To me, like I just said, the Occam's razor is that he dreamed up a thing that sounded neat and kind of cool, like adventurous. Like, what if I did this? Like, I could get through the chimney and come into the place through the chimney or something like that. But there's no way to know. Now, if the clothes are just folded like to the side of the chimney, that's definitely strange. But I don't know how fastidious he was. Who knows?
This is what I'm saying. Maybe he did. Maybe
18-year-old me couldn't fold a sock in half.
Well, I met you.
Would I?
I met you when you were 30, and I remember your laundry mountain. So
slow down. I was pretty put together. I was more put together at that point, but the point. Look, laundry at 18 years old. I mean, come on,
That's okay. You were in need of a wife, Stephanie.
Yeah, that's true. I was at 18 too. I just didn't have enough game.
Well, that's true. We met at the right time.
It's true. That is also true.
So going back to Josh's case, Chuck Murphy was so adamant about the fact that there was a grate over the chimney, and there was no way Josh could have been wedged in the chimney in the way that the coroner had suggested, that the coroner actually reopened the case. But the coroner kept going back to the fact that the positioning of Josh's body indicated he was someone going down the chimney. So he said, okay, well, I can look into the idea of someone stuffing him up the chimney. Eventually, Coroner Bourne came back and said, in his opinion, there would be no way for a single individual to place Josh in the chimney that way. If foul play were involved, there would have had to been at least 2 individuals to get Josh in the chimney in that position. But people kept coming back to the idea of the clothes in the cabin. Like, how can you say he was trying to gain access to the cabin if his clothes were already in the cabin? Like, that doesn't make sense, at least that part of his theory. I'm not discounting the fact that Josh may have tried to come down the chimney, but it definitely wasn't to gain access. And maybe, like you said, maybe it was just on a whim. Maybe there is no real reason per se.
Right. And look, could 2 people or 3 people or whatever somehow, some way get him in there in that way? I suppose. But again, the way my mind works, I'm just going to go Occam's razor every time. I'm going to be like, no, that makes no sense. Things have happened that don't make sense. But in this case, you're telling me like 2 or 3 people contrived this sort of young man that has no enemies. There's just this kid who clearly went to this cabin, to me, that's nearby his house, and was like, oh, I'm just going to go hang out in here on my own. Somehow there are people that like did harm to him that there's no evidence of, and then somehow stuffed him into a chimney for some reason. I mean, I find that very hard to believe. Could it happen? Sure. I mean, I guess, but
what my mind went to was, what if this was like some kind of dare? What if there was someone else there with him that had folded the clothes or had put the clothes to the side? Like, what if somebody had dared him to go down the chimney and then he got stuck and they got scared or something? I mean, again, I'm grasping at straws.
Well, even if they had, I mean, I don't think it changes much of the analysis, right? I mean, 2 boys hanging out and one says, hey, I wonder if you could do this. But again, the other boy hanging out with him, he's going to fold the clothes. Again, 18-year-old boys can't fold clothes, nor would they even think to. And he's going to be like, hey, what if you could go in that chimney? Okay, well, I'm going to take off all my clothes off except for the shirt to go down the chimney. What? I mean, that makes no sense to me.
But
So,
again, why would he have chosen to take off his clothes if he went down the chimney without being dared?
again, that's why if the clothes are just set aside, like they didn't fall off, but come down the chimney in some way, I do find that fact very strange. I do. And the fact that I would almost make more sense if he had no clothes on.
Right.
Like he had a shirt on, but all the rest of them, I mean, that is weird. There's no particular explanation that comes to mind for me on that.
Yeah, like, why would he be naked? Like, even if he was just like, you know what? I'm going to see if I can go down that chimney. Why on earth did he only have a shirt on? And again, I could see in preparation, he's like, well, it's going to be pretty tight. I better strip down. Or at a minimum, leave your underwear on. Like, I would think that would be important. Like, I'm going to take off my shirt and my pants and my shoes, but I'm going to leave my underwear on. Like, the fact that he didn't even have underwear on is very strange to me.
You know, the sort of like preparation for going down a chimney is not really a checklist I've ever run across. But I don't know that leaving the shirt on, I don't know that any of it makes any sense. But to me, it's either you have them all on or none of them on. Maybe the underwear, like you said, but I just don't know what the logic there is. You're trying to squeeze yourself down a chimney. I guess nothing, but I'm not sure.
Right. Well, unfortunately, no one gained any more answers to these questions than you and I have sitting in this room. So Josh's death was once again closed as an accident. Coroner Bourne said, quote, there is so far no answers to a number of things. It is very confusing. This is probably one of the more tragic ones that I have ever had to deal with, end quote.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. To think about his parents is just, I don't really want to think about it.
Yeah.
Considering that they lost him and then had already lost their other son.
Yeah.
It's just atrocious.
Yeah. Chuck, the owner of the cabin, to this day remains convinced that Josh's death in his cabin was not an accident. Now, as far as a police investigation, well, there really has never been one. Because the coroner has now twice ruled Josh's death an accident, there's nothing to investigate. The Woodland Park police, who initially handled Josh's disappearance, say the case is in the hands of the coroner's office. Commander James Holleran said, quote, because of the way he ruled it, it's his case, not ours, end quote. But just because there hasn't been an official investigation doesn't mean information hasn't become available. Remember, this is a fairly small town where everybody kind of knows the secrets. Everybody knows what everybody else is doing. So tips started to come in and the rumor mill started churning. One tip that has been regularly circulated involved a man who had a long history of committing violent crimes and spending time in prison. This person was allegedly seen hanging out with Josh, though it's not clear when. One specific tipster alleged this person killed Josh and put him in the chimney, but they did not offer any pertinent information like dates or times that they were seen together. So it is possible this is nothing more than a rumor. But then another tip came in that may have some validity. Now, between Cynthia and me, she's usually the one to talk about information found in the annals of Reddit. Are you familiar with Reddit in any capacity?
Oh, I know that it exists.
Okay, well, that's really all you need to know for the purpose of this podcast. Cynthia loves to go down rabbit holes. She just goes and goes and goes. I'm just on a complete fact-finding mission. She is like, I want to find these nuggets of weirdness and then go and see if I can verify it somewhere. So she loves to write cases and then go onto Reddit to see what other people are saying about the case. But in this particular case, I am going to talk about a post that was made on Reddit. In a post from 2015, the year Josh was found, a man named Andy was fingered as Josh's murderer. This Andy turned out to be Andrew Richard Newman, a convicted murderer. According to eyewitnesses, he was seen with Josh shortly before his disappearance and untimely death. Now, Andy has never been named as a suspect in Josh's death, but to that point, no one has been named as a suspect since the coroner's report states his death was an accident, not a homicide. However, I think most would agree the circumstances surrounding Josh's death are bizarre and not easily explainable. And unfortunately, There is no active investigation into what may have happened to him.
What eyewitnesses? Under what circumstances?
There were people in town that saw this convicted murderer and Josh together.
And they told the police?
Yeah, but there's no investigation. They've told the police, but the police are like, well, that's not an active investigation. It was an accident. There's nothing to go on. There is no open case. There is no open investigation. So unless the coroner change it to something else, like there's nothing to explore.
Yeah, I hear you.
Now, clearly this ruffled a lot of feathers, especially with a specific name being correlated to this incident. And in a later interview with Pikes Peak Courier, Coroner Bourne addressed the frustration of many. Quote, "I know it's not a natural death, and I'm confident it's not a suicide. My other options are an accidental death, homicide, and undetermined cause of death. It is frustrating that we can't pin it down. In my opinion, he could at least change it to undetermined cause of death. At least that would allow for an investigation to happen."
Yeah, I think that's probably appropriate considering the circumstances. And particularly with the clothing. I mean, if the clothing are folded aside, all of that is really odd. And if you have a kid hanging out with a convicted murderer and then he ends up dead in a chimney, I mean, that is a little different. Yeah, I can't wrap my mind around that somehow this kid was hanging out with a murderer. He's in, high school or whatever? I don't know what to make of that.
I think where the frustration comes is this may wind up being a nothing. Again, this is a Reddit post. It could mean absolutely nothing. It's a very bizarre death. As we know, especially on social media, rumor mill goes crazy. This could mean nothing, but I do think it's a frustrating situation because there's not even any grounds to investigate.
Right, because the coroner just said the body was not damaged in terms of there's no evidence of any kind of injury or something being done to him or anything like that.
Well, but I will add, though, that was only hard tissue. Remember, I mean, it was almost skeletal. I mean, there was some mummified tissue, but say there was just some soft tissue damage that we couldn't find that had been degraded away. And that's a possibility, too. Unfortunately, at this point, we don't have a lot more information to go on. I mean, what was Josh doing in the abandoned cabin? Did he go into the chimney himself, or did someone put him there? Josh's sister, Kate, said, quote, "We'll never really know what happened to him. It's a horror story in my mind to imagine what my brother must have gone through." End quote.
Absolutely. I'm not willing to abandon my Occam's razor sort of analysis on the basis that some unknown person on Reddit just says, well, there's some people that said he was with this murderer. That's interesting to discuss. And if you're the police, if this kid dies in, direct proximity to spending time with someone who's a convicted murderer, I mean, you would have to think there'd be some look at him. And I get, well, that the coroner says that he died from an accident. And I guess that cuts it off. But anyway, I'm not willing to let the Reddit guy lead me off of the path. To me, it's unfortunately probably was an accident. I really think that's the case. I could certainly be convinced otherwise if there was more evidence of that.
Well, that brings us to this month's Branch of Hope. This month we are featuring Futures Without Violence. Futures is a domestic violence prevention organization that we covered in the Mary Day case. Mary Day was a young girl that disappeared under very suspicious circumstances. And whether she was found or not, you be the judge, her life was marked by a large degree of domestic violence that really shaped her for the rest of her life. So, to help others that may be in her circumstances, we have chosen to sponsor Futures Without Violence. Now, I've talked about Futures in a couple different scenarios, but they have this really neat page on their website that I would like to go through with you. It's called Futures by the Numbers. Here are a few statistics. So, Futures has been operating for 40 years to prevent domestic violence. And over that time, they have connected over 1 million young people to adult mentors and coaches to respond to mental health needs. They have also supported over 100 community organizations across the United States. And they have trained over 8,000 judges, healthcare providers, high school coaches, child welfare workers, and other professionals in ways to prevent domestic violence. I just am so pleased that our dollars are getting paired with them and are going to help children, that are stuck in these very difficult family situations. And, and again, as I said, they shape them for their entire lives. So we are very proud that they are our nonprofit organization of the month. If you are our Patreon, know that a portion of your subscription is going directly to Futures Without Violence. That should make you feel really good about yourself. You are helping to support creators. We are moms loving on our kids, loving on our families, loving researching these cases and presenting them to you. So you are supporting us, and then you're also helping to support your community through these wonderful nonprofit programs like Futures Without Violence. If you would like to be a Patreon member, you can find us on Patreon. Our subscriptions start as little as $2. So like less than a cup of coffee. You can sponsor us for the month and know that you are always supporting nonprofit organizations in the community. To find out more information about our branch of Hope or information about Futures Without Violence, please head to our website, thedarkoak.com, our Instagram page, The Dark Oak Podcast, or send us a message at thedarkoakpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to any of your questions, comments, episode suggestions, anything else. And in the meantime, also make sure you head to our Instagram and sign up for our giveaway. Super fun celebration. We will be with you again in 2 days on Friday with a bonus episode. Thank you guys so much for hanging in there for almost 100 episodes. And thank you so much, Barton, for being here today. I know that Cynthia is going to be listening to this episode, and even though I talk to her daily, I'm going to give her a public shout out and let her know that we love her so, so much. She is a wonderful daughter, and we are all in this together, Cynthia. We love you.
Love you, Cynthia.
We will see you in 2 days for the missing person case of David Snedden. David's disappearance, while tragic, may also be marked with a little bit of conspiracy theory, a little bit of espionage. We'll see what you think.
Okay.
All right.
Looking forward to it.
See you, Shiver Seekers. Bye-bye. This episode of The Dark Oak was created, researched, written, recorded, hosted, edited, published, and marketed by Cynthia and Stephanie of Just Us Gals Productions, and made possible by you, our shiver-seeking listener. Special thanks goes to Justice Himes for our incredible artwork and Ryan Crete for our amazing music.